Welcome back to another episode of the Quillette podcast. You're with me, Zoe Booth. And today I bring to you a different type of guest to who you might expect to see on Quillette. His name is Dr Mike Israetel. He's a well-known bodybuilder and fitness influencer who has amassed over 1 million followers across Instagram and YouTube. His fans, myself included, appreciate the way he blends his expertise in sports physiology, which he holds a PhD in, with humor. And unlike many fitness influencers who are, frankly put, pretty dumb, Mike is extremely well-read and very interested in politics and philosophy. When I saw that Dr. Mike started following the Quillette Instagram page a few weeks ago, I was absolutely starstruck, and I knew that I had to invite him onto the podcast, which he was kind enough to agree to. In this episode, we talk about why bodybuilders are traditionally pretty dumb, how Mike would rule the world if he was a dictator, why he loves Coleman Hughes, Milton Friedman, and Thomas Sowell, and whether him making jokes about being Jewish empowers racists to do the same. If you like this podcast, please like it, share it with your mates, and subscribe to Quillette. And without much further ado, let's get into this podcast with Dr. Mike Israetel. Our audience probably isn't super familiar with you. They're not the biggest, fitness-going people. Some are, I'm sure.
Sure.
But there's a whole other side of you that you talk about a little bit. You've got another channel, more of a philosophy channel, but you are known as being an absolutely jacked, massive bodybuilder. What else is there to Mike? What's the philosophical side of Mike? How did you come across Quillette?
I think I came across Quillette, hopefully this is correct, by reading an article authored by Coleman Hughes. Mm-hmm. Back in the day. It might have been one of his first, if not his first, public pieces of literature that he authored was through Quillette. And
you're correct. Yeah, I think we were the first to publish him.
Yeah, and I became aware of the fact that if you guys were willing to publish someone like Coleman and let him express his views, that you were probably far above average in intellectual rigor and interest in looking for the truth. It's not the same thing you can say for a lot of media outlets, especially this back like 2020 or something. It's kind of a weird time where anything you said was potentially cancel worthy. So ever since then, I've gotten to know Quillette as an institution that allows the platforming of folks that have really thoughtful things to say, and not just thoughtful, but thoughtful in a genuine and well-meaning way. People are really trying to figure things out, really trying to bring clarity, and have what I'd call sort of like a seemingly, most of the folks that write have like a universally agreed upon list of what is good and bad that seems to be like we all should think that, but many people don't, or at least many of the news media outlets that a lot of people write for can't seem to get to that consensus. And I thought that was very cool. I was a big fan of Quillette ever since. Huge fan of Coleman Hughes, of course, but it's too important to recognize that I exist. And then are
there any other writers or thinkers that you're a big fan of? Who inspires you in that way?
In general, man, yeah. So like, I read
bonus points
a lot.
If they've written for Quillette.
You're right. Some of these folks definitely have not, but you can tell me. So I got into some Milton Friedman back in the day. Now, originally in high school, they had us read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I thought it was cool. It had like some emotional impact. It was very awesome. It kind of sat well with my soul. I didn't find it intellectually too compelling. And then I got into Thomas Sowell. From having read a lot of Milton Friedman's works. I read a lot of other folks in that general space. And then I got into reading a lot of Bryan Caplan, who I think is just one of the just greatest people, period. And a phenomenal economist and person who can explain things to folks that have maybe in a non-technical way that some people can understand. I'm a huge fan. I've read a lot of Steven Pinker. I think he's unbelievable. And he's
definitely written for us. Yeah.
Steven Pinker has?
Quillette. Yeah.
Ooh,
so, yeah.
That's a serious thing.
We're mates.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. And so I've read a lot of other stuff, but basically, I do have an interest in thinking deeply about the state of the world, and probably my most overarching thing that I don't want to say keeps me up at night, but I think about a lot is um, where society is going. What's the directionality, and how does that interact with the directionality of life on Earth, the directionality of complex adaptive systems, and you zoom in at any one point, and I'm interested in all the zooming, but something especially apparent to me, or seemingly apparent to me, was that there are ways of organizing societies that, dare I get in trouble for a slight comedic exaggeration, are just plain old better. They're just better. And they're better if you poll maybe 95 or 7% of the people that live in the society, really kind of almost anywhere on Earth. And so I became very fascinated.
Can you give an example? What are you thinking about?
Yeah. So generally freedom promoting democratic republics with organized government, strong rule of law, and a high degree of economic and social freedom had just kind of left everyone behind. I mean, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, United States. There's tons of other countries that make that list. You can just interchange them, and like you put on the blindfold and you get teleported to Sweden and take off the blindfold. Where are you? You're like, I don't know. It looks like where I left off. And like, nope, the signs are in Swedish. You're like, right, okay. So there's no landmines. There's nobody trying to kill me for my political views. Everyone is by global and historical standards frivolously rich. The poorest people are obese, which is a curious problem to have. And so just a lot of things done right. And this doesn't, I don't like the distinction between Western and non-Western. I like a term that I think I forget where I heard it. It's one of those brainiac motherfuckers. Am I allowed to swear, or is that not cool?
Of course, go for it.
Okay, right on. One of these Scott Alexander types, I forget who exactly, but the term was universal culture. And it's a culture that everyone really starts to adopt when they're exposed to it. Shopping malls and McDonald's and social media. Nobody says no to that ever voluntarily. Mm-hmm. And you can see it in South Korea and Japan and Taiwan. So these are folks that are not Caucasian, so goodbye white supremacy right offhand. They're not Western, so goodbye Western supremacy. But they have societies that are, again, largely huge rule of law, high degree of economic and social freedom. And when you combine all of that, you get just really, really awesome places to live. And I didn't immediately understand that when I was younger, but I do have a really interesting experience of having come from the Soviet Union to the United States. So
how old were you when you
I was 7. And so I have vivid memories of life in the Soviet Union. I was from Moscow, Russia, but it didn't say Russia on our passports, Soviet Union. And so I know what it's like to live in a different place where things work differently. And you get a kind of an inherent appreciation for that sort of thing. And the other thing that I'm super interested in, there's a bunch of other shit, of course. Bit of a nerd, no offense.
We only have 50 minutes.
I know. Is progress. Okay. So like, Sweden didn't look 400 years ago or 50 years ago like it does today. And the world simply isn't standing still. Some places of the world, some ways of doing things promote things getting better all the time. Some 50-50, and some things just kind of, they get better a little bit just because it's difficult to like keep technology completely away in best practices from your country, but at a snail's pace. And so it's really, to me, a super important question all around of what are the ingredients by which we design societies in the free world through voting, in large part, and advocacy. What are the ingredients of these societies that can make them awesome and can enhance the speed of progress? And to me, that's a huge, huge deal. And that is, I think, in many cases missed, and in some cases worse. I mean, a lot of people suffer from the pessimistic fallacy, which Brian Kaplan describes really well, is they don't even think things are getting better in the best countries in the world. And that's just objectively wrong. And so there's a lot of parsing you have to do through people's personal politics to get to a point where they agree, okay, look, we agree on a lot of stuff is good. Like, for example, people on the political right wing are not interested in seeing homeless people starving to death on the street. They're not. Almost no one. And maybe it's some of them for icky reasons, like they don't care if they live or die, but they just don't want to see it. Like, oh my word, like a Victorian stepping over a dying poor.
Yeah.
And then people
a
on the
small amount of people. Yeah.
Very tiny. And the political left, maybe nobody wants to see homeless people starving in the street. And so it's like, okay, so nobody's pro homelessness. Nobody's pro people being poor. Nobody's pro police brutality, but also nobody's pro violent crime. And so when you check off the boxes of what most people want, it looks like countries like Canada, Sweden, the United States, etc., would just do way better of a job at pretty much all those things. And it starts to be really interesting. It's like, how are we voting and how are we expressing our understanding, our political opinions in order to get our countries closer to that awesomeness and further away from stuff that just doesn't work all that well,
Yeah. And this has been on my mind so much recently. I think, post October 7th, I really did think about the morality of different cultures and religions, because I grew up in an atheist household. My parents aren't even married. I didn't go to, scripture. I actually had a really poor understanding of the Abrahamic religions. And I'm learning it as an adult. And I'm reading Dominion, which is an incredible book by Tom Holland.
I haven't looked into this a ton, mostly because of my views on religion. But the Judeo-Christian situation... Say what?
What are your views on religion? That you're quite anti-religion, I assume?
Not necessarily anti. I think religion evolved as a way of sort of making us all really bought into the team that is our clan. All humans evolved in clans of several dozen to several hundred people in size in the last 50,000 years. And it's just clan warfare around the world the entire time since then. It's one of the reasons it's very easy from an evolutionary perspective to explain why high school football towns in Texas get so after each other and get so crazy over games of two high schools. We are pre-primed to be on a team. And our warriors going off to battle to fight the other tribe is a big deal. And so religion in that context, I mean, there were like thousands of religions. Everyone had their own clan. The religions of today are just exceptionally mimetic, exceptionally viral, and they won out for a variety of reasons. But so my view of religion as a sociological process and as an anthropological process is different from my views of religion as is God really real? And miracles and stuff. That is like, I was just like Steven Pinker, I believe in the Blank Slate, basically said like no educated adult can really entertain like classic religion as like a real thing. It's like insane and it's just like obvious. But I will say that the Judeo-Christian thing has me thinking, because was there part of the Judeo-Christian value set that was missing during the Crusades and that was missing during the Catholic Church's hegemony of power and abuse around the world? Or were they just like not sufficiently sort of like the good stuff didn't bubble up the top just yet? Were people focused on the wrong subset of Judeo-Christian values? The alternative hypothesis, and maybe it's a mixture of the two that's reality, is that Enlightenment values actually what makes societies like Australia and Taiwan awesome and not Judeo-Christian, because the people who lived in a Judeo-Christian world back in the day, it was fucking brutal, woman-owning, slavery-holding, the whole thing. And I just don't know where the Judeo-Christian part comes in.
Why did the Enlightenment happen in Europe, in these Judeo-Christian nations? Why did it not happen? Why did these Enlightenment ideas not bubble up somewhere else in the world? Why was it there?
I was under the impression that the Enlightenment came out of some folks getting tired of a complete lack of religious freedom in various areas and freedom in general. But I don't know of any major tradition in Christianity that seeks to enhance skepticism and the questioning of the world around. I don't know of any particularly libertine tradition in Christianity and Judaism. Holy shit. I mean, it's dependent on what part of the Old Testament you're really interested in, because there's parts in there that are just totally insane. Like, executing all homosexuals, executing people who eat shrimp.
But does that still happen now?
It happens not because of Judeo-Christian values, but seemingly in spite of them. I mean, if you were to take the literal word of the Torah and the Bible, you'd be crusading right now, perhaps. And exactly. So I think we maybe because we're grown up in enlightened times, we can look back and sort of pick all the stuff from Judeo-Christian tradition that fits and say, oh, maybe we got it from that. And I'm pretty ignorant on that subject specifically. I would just say I'm guardedly skeptical based on very little knowledge that Judeo-Christian tradition is really the thing that gave birth to the Enlightenment. Maybe, but I would also say summarily that the Enlightenment is actually that's the thing now. And so there's no need to say, it's Judeo-Christian values. So for example, one of our ancestors, like Homo habilis, for example, you don't have to say the Homo habilis is that's the thing that makes us human. No, we have modern humans that are just even more human than that. And so I would say Enlightenment values, values of liberty and rule of law and property rights and everything like that, those can be applied to any societies pretty much regardless of their endemic values. They were applied exceptionally successfully in Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Singapore, with no Christian populations whatsoever. And those folks took to the shit maybe even better than the rest of us. And so maybe the Judeo-Christian thing has water. No doubt I'm exposing my ignorance here, but to me, even if it does, I think we don't need to maybe as a society double down on Judeo-Christian values. I think that we maybe need to double down on Enlightenment values. I'll say this. A lot of people are interested in the same outcomes, but a lot of people have differences in values that are not so much outcome-based, but for their own sake kind of based. And then some people, I would say, are probably not worldly and educated enough to have a cogent political opinion. If you finish 3 grades of school and it's mostly religious school and you have a thought on hegemony or something, it just doesn't really matter because you're just not educated enough. I don't walk into an appendicitis surgery and go, you cut the wrong thing there, doc, because I have no idea what the hell's going on. And so a lot of people, their idea of what values they have is they're really just dealing with what they learned as kids and what goes on in their 20 square miles within their house. And when you learn and read a lot and are exposed to how things work over history and over the course of the world, you start to pick up on the fact that, gee whiz, I really didn't know a whole lot. And now I can start to make sense of some things. The thing with, the situation in Gaza is actually October 7th had almost no effect on me whatsoever because I didn't understand how that was a change from anything. It's nothing new. There was an Israeli scholar who's fucking brilliant. He got interviewed a few days after, and they were like, how do you see it? He's like, no difference to me. Same as before, same as after, same people trying to kill us, same shit. And so, but when you talk to someone who has a world model, how they think the world works, that is pretty feature complete as what Islam was 1,000 years ago. And probably not much more nuanced than that. You're going to get a certain degree of behavior, which is logical and predictable. So for example, if you really do believe that fighting the infidel gets you martyred and sent to heaven, and that as many innocent people of your own group go with you, they all get to heaven too. It's nominally easy to conclude that bring on the total war. And so, yeah. And so that, I think there's on college campuses in America for sure, and the more extreme left, there's an assumption that everyone's kind of same, thinks roughly the same thing about how people should be treated and how the world should work. And that's true for most people in the developed world, but in the developing world, that's often just not remotely true. And it just is not helpful to interpolate our values to them and be well, this is what they want. not this is basically a meme at this point, but like the Queers for Palestine thing. It's just like, I'd love to sit one of those people down and be like, listen, like LGBT all the way. It was like, these people want to exterminate the idea of you and you personally. And usually what they'll retort to is a standard leftist critique of like, well, like they were the ones oppressed. They didn't start it. As you dig through that, you realize that's not true. And then you're like, so what do you have to say to that? And I've actually never been that far down a conversation with someone in order to get to that. But the idea that everyone wants the same thing is almost true in modern societies, but isn't remotely true across the world. Like, for example, there was a really awesome, I forgot what her name was. She's like a political analyst, and she teaches for like the Defense Department. And she was on a Indian guy's podcast, and she was like, what he asked her was like something to the extent of like, how does China think about its people and stuff, and like what's good for its people and kind of how to move forward for its people. And she's like, oh, that's not how China thinks at all. And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're just used to like, she didn't say it exactly this way, but you're just used to like, democracy and stuff. Like Trump has to kind of think like the American people. Otherwise he just doesn't get elected next term. Same with Biden, same with everyone, same with Australia, etc. But in China, it's a core group of several thousand Communist Party people and their core people up there, and they just kind of decide everything. So if it's good for them, it's good. If it's bad for regular peasant people, as long as cameras don't go over there, they don't care. And that's kind of like shocking to people. Most people just don't want to admit that, but it's true. And so I have all kinds of political hardline stances that I don't even know if I should express in public related to that, but maybe they'll get good clickbait for you. So.
Well, yeah, let's get into it. But I was just going to say that I think we agree that deep down, in like Maslow's hierarchy, yes, every single human has a desire for like shelter, sex, food, sleep. That we can, whether you're in China or wherever. But I think once all those needs are met, humans have or need to have some sort of purpose. And in the West, maybe, now that we've lost religion in many ways, like where we don't know 100% what our purpose is, we don't have a unified purpose. And that's why you've got people like on campus, supporting jihadis. And then you've got people like, supporting white supremacy or, all these different fragmented groups. Whereas other cultures, it's really clear what they stand for, and that's, supporting the CCP or like, supporting a free Palestine and liberating it from the evil Zionists, and I will die for this cause, and that is my meaning. Or, a free island or a free Basque country or whatever. So, that's my bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot to say about all that. I'm trying to choose my topics and words correctly. A lot of cancelable opinions. I have to filter through.
For yourself, do you not? Essentially, like you are no. Dr. Mike, you can say, can't you say?
No, I work for a company. Well, I work for RP, and so there's only so much I can. Also, it's my own personal security would be at stake if I said I really thought about a lot of these things. Yeah.
Wow.
But
damn, you've got to tell me that when I stop recording. I want to know your most controversial. What's your most controversial opinion that you can say?
Well, so the problem is it's on that line of controversial and not, so I could easily toe over and step.
I can cut it out.
I think what can I say? I have to be limited in how I say this. I think there are objectively better and worse ways to run a society. I think that some people are not culturally developed enough to run their own society. This is insanely pedantic, but it's meant in the best way. If you let 12-year-olds run a housing situation or a workplace, it's going to be fucking chaos. Mm-hmm. And if you let adults run it, it's just going to go better, even for the 12-year-olds. So I think that when there's a lot of political debate about what's the right way to do things, I think the data-driven science of economics and sociology has already quashed all those opinions. For example, like, how do we make better living conditions? Well, it's like economic freedom It's just undefeated. This is just no point in debating it anymore. And so when anyone debates it, it's like, that's a thing. Another thing I think is the time for dictators is going to have to come to an end. And so, for example, take what is happening with Russia, Ukraine. The fact that there's controversy around this is upsetting, but understandable. Ukraine didn't pose a single threat to Vladimir Putin's regime. And if Vladimir Putin was as smart as people like to pretend that he is, he would have read like one book about basic economics. And since he has absolute power in his country, he could have restructured Russia over time to do, so, well, really two things. One, institute a system of economic freedom. Nobody said social freedom. You don't have to free the newspaper. Singapore had that for a long time. Pure economic freedom or near, social freedom zero, political freedom zero. You don't have to vote on shit. You don't have to talk about shit. But you can go to work, make all the money you want. You pay your taxes fair and square. No one's coming after you. Could have done that. And then he could have instituted the world's most brutal and rapid anti-corruption campaign, such as that if you're discovered being corrupt, because Russia has a really nasty, deep cultural corruption problem that spans centuries, really, and definitely decades. You're caught being corrupt of shit, you either taken in the street, shot in the back of the head, or you taken to jail forever, or you just get fucking exported. Within the 20 years that he's been in power, he could have turned Russia into a megalith that produced unreal amounts of wealth and made him the first trillionaire. What did he do instead? He tried to revive the Cold War with a country that was like a burnt out cigarette after you're done smoking it worth of power. And he sold arms to a bunch of people just so he could get a cut, so that he could make a couple sly $100 billion on the side. He's like the world's most powerful small-time arms smuggler. And so Ukraine posed no threat to him whatsoever. He just unilaterally invaded three times as of 2022, because there was the Donetsk and Luhansk stuff, there was Crimea, and then there was the most recent invasion. And so why is Putin doing this? For glory to the old Russian Republic, period, and to himself as the sort of the head of state for the representation symbolically for the Russian Republic. And he's toasted now at least 500,000 people, depending on how you count on it, for the purpose of regressing his area of the world into a worse standard of living for no upside. There's no upside. There's a cool upside for the United States and Western powers. They get a really cool chance to test some technology and throw away their old stuff to get used. It's nice. But other than that, there's nothing. And it's kind of like, why Putin exist? Why do we put up with this? And so, like, if I was president of the world or whatever, president of the United States, but not president like ruler, which I think is a terrible idea, should never be allowed that power. But if I was, to come in, I'd be like, so first of all, what I would do is go back to the Defense Department and be like, I think they're already doing this, but if they're not, be like, comprehensive anti-ballistic missile defense system that has a 9,990 a 9-to-1 chance of missing any incoming mass attacks. Just get
like
on
the Iron Dome.
Like Iron Dome times 10 around the fucking world, definitely around the US and NATO allies. And just get to work on that. Let me know when you guys finish. And once that's in place, we just reach out to Russia and be like, you're done. You're out of power. You're back in power. We're going to take over. We're going to run your country for you better than you can do it yourself. After that's done, we turn to China and go, no more communism, no more oppression, no more threatening Taiwan. One more fucking word about Taiwan and we toast. Well, we don't have to toast all of you because we don't have to do a preemptive nuclear strike because we could just do decapitation strikes on like civil buildings and military buildings in Beijing. Like it doesn't even have to come to that. So dictators and communist parties and shit like that, they're just bad. Just bad, period. So like China and Taiwan, there's no controversy. Taiwan, each person in Taiwan is 3 times wealthier than their counterpart in China. They're genetically identical people. And so really Taiwan should just be allowed to take over China and run it better than they can. And so if you just keep going the dominoes down like that, you turn to the Middle East, you turn to Africa, there's ways of running the world that are just better. Now, I wouldn't hold this position if these folks didn't come in and attack freedom-loving people or threaten freedom-loving people. So if China just like North Korea, No problem. The most brutal thing ever. When the documentaries all come out, when it gets liberated, everyone who didn't support North Korean liberation is going to feel real bad about themselves. But they don't they threaten other places, but not in a real serious way. And so fuck them. Just let them sit there. Fuck them. But China's legitimately threatening Taiwan and trying to expand its power. For me, flat out, absolutely not. Because the reality is the US and Western allies are 5 times more powerful than China and Russia combined. And the thing with repressive regimes and communist regimes, dictatorships, they a lot of times only understand force. And Westerners are how can we work with you? How can we help you? And they're these idiots. We're going to trick them into taking over, destroying their own cultures. And then we seep in and do all the right stuff. And I'm just a big fan of reasserting the supremacy of the free world and being you don't fuck with the free world. Mm-hmm. That's it. You don't fuck with the free world. And when you do, you get the shit hard. And that I think is just I don't know, man, that's how I'd like to see things. I think low key, that's how things are anyway. Because so people say, is Russia going to start a war with NATO? Not if they want Russia to not exist after 2 weeks. They know that. Maybe. But then again, they should have known that the Ukraine invasion was going to be a disaster. Didn't know that. So I don't know, man. It's just, I think that's a hardline take. But I think it's really cool. I think freedom is really great. And when people, even in another country, don't experience freedom, we should consider liberating them. And if they culturally just more or less all don't like freedom, fucking sweet. Enjoy your pigsty. You so much as threaten anyone, you're done. That's my personal opinion on the matter. So what Israel is doing with Hamas, par for the course. They asked for it, by the way. They wanted a holy war. You got it. You just were outmatched 100 to 1.
100%. Yeah, unfortunately, people in the West just don't, at least in my generation, just don't think like that and don't get it. And even if Hamas is saying, we want a holy war, we want to kill all Jews, we want all Zionists dead, they'll just be oh no, they don't really mean that. They just mean resistance, and it's been really bad for them. And they, I feel sorry. So
yeah, I
my
can't
concern,
go down that road politically anymore.
Oh,
I have nothing more nice to say about that.
But my concern is the reason why my generation is so different to my parents' generation, for example. One of the reasons is social media, and that people who usually wouldn't be that politically engaged, maybe half a century ago, they would have had, I don't know, just a normal job and would have watched the evening news, and that would have been the extent of their, thoughts on political matters. And now just being fed, propaganda essentially of all different types. And it's we're all forced to participate in, geopolitics, and some people just aren't educated enough or really intelligent enough to comprehend what's happening. And, it's fine. Most of these people aren't going to go on to create policy for, Australia or the United States or wherever, but they do vote. And in Australia, there's compulsory voting. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, we could talk about that later. I'm actually quite a fan. But in this sense, these people are voting, and, they do have, it's true democracy in a sense that they, their shitty takes on, Israel or Ukraine or whatever do matter.
They do matter.
So I'm a bit...
I think the only real big way to get a lot of improvement on that front is for people to get smarter. There's a big consilience of understanding between people that enhances as their intelligence goes up. Most people of very, very high intelligence will be some sort of essentially state capacity libertarian, for lack of a better word. Have a state that's well run, can exert significant power, but generally just sets up a decent functioning regulatory framework, objectively tests whether or not that framework is working, iterates on it, and continues to provide increases in prosperity for everybody. Most really smart people get to that point. As you go down the hierarchy of intelligence or mental ability, you get like more and more support for totalitarian views. Some of it is a frustration in response to a complexity people don't understand, perhaps, but also like just a sort of faltering to baser instincts. Like, why can't these people just get in line? You would understand that if you had some nuance, but if you don't, no big deal. And so I think that when people become significantly more intelligent, we'll see an incredible explosion in how awesomely the world works, because people will just straight up make better decisions, and from all the way down politics and everything.
So you're optimistic about the future?
I'm not sure. People probably would describe me as an optimist, but if you just look at the trends over time, I'm like slightly pessimistic realist, because things get radically better all the time, exponentially, in fact. But I think that we're looking at some really crazy stuff about to start happening here in the next 10 years or so, unprecedented stuff that will change a lot. For example, I think AI is on track to give us the ability to start enhancing our own intelligence in vivo. I think there are pills just beyond the horizon that you take for a few months and you gain some IQ points, and then the next pill comes out and you gain some more. And I think people taking pills like that and eventually getting genetic modifications will make everyone way smarter, and then way smarter, and then way smarter, and then way smarter. And then once you have an average global IQ, anywhere you go that the people around have an IQ average of like 115 to 130 is almost paradisical. Most university campuses, which outside of screaming leftists are excellent places, there's just no violence and no oppression and nothing of that sort. And I think mostly that's just a function of people just being smarter. And I think that's going to be cool.
Well, that leads into a topic I wanted to bring up with you, which is, the smarter people get, the more they use their brain, it's like the less they need to use the violence of their body, in a way. And that sort of goes into bodybuilding in a way, which is, I love bodybuilding. I've been doing it for a while. I think you're quite familiar with it as well. I've
seen it a few times on TV.
They're weirdos. So like narcissistic and obsessed with themselves. It's disgusting.
It's gross.
Why is it, and do you believe it's true that, people who are more obsessed with their body are a bit dumber? And, why is it so incredible that there's a bodybuilder like you who's very successful at bodybuilding, but also very intelligent and philosophical and can talk about these issues? Like, it seems quite rare. And yeah, what is it about that, like, dichotomy?
I'll give you one answer which probably describes the most variance, and another answer which describes a lot of the rest, but is real nasty. And if anyone wants to take a leap down that one, have fun. So the first answer is you're just taking two disparate traits and assuming genetic variation is purely random, which is a fine assumption to make currently. The probability that anyone shares two vastly disparate traits at the same time is a multiple of the occurrence of those traits. So the probability that someone's top 10% in intelligence and top 10% in physique is just 0.1 multiplied by 0.1, which is now like 1 in 100 instead of 1 in 10. And so just because of that, it's just rare to see someone who has both of those things going on. It's like, how many people do you see that are like race car drivers and professional wrestlers? You're like, well, it's very few, maybe none. Well, it's just because one of those requires a lot of investment in some regard and a lot of genetics for one thing and the other for another thing. And to have genetics for both and be interested in both, there's a lot of probabilities that multiply it. All of them are less than one, usually substantially less. And then so it's just rare to have any combination of. It's like if you see a person who's female and 6'10", it's just like just really rare. So
unless you're in the Netherlands or somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's just a dime a dozen. I think challenging yourself in the gym can become something that teaches you a little bit more about the deeper wisdom in life. I think exercise has been demonstrated as very healthy for the brain and boosts your intelligence if done regularly. I don't know if there's some kind of deeper philosophical connection. It's just like right-wing male Roman Empire fetishist meme to be like, strong mind is strong body, brother. I don't know. Bill Gates doesn't have a very strong body, but I take his mind over anything else. So I think they're kind of probably in the grand scheme doing one of these. But the other reason is something called RK selection. And if you Google it, it's typically not applied to humans. R-selected animals rely on their bodies more than their brains. They typically engage in more short-sighted, rapid payoff behavior. They typically have more offspring, and each offspring does not get as much investment. Think like bees versus whales or something. And same thing works in humans. And so folks that have the kind of genetics that gives you an awesome body are a little bit less likely than chance to have genetics that give you an exceptional brain with that kind of cognitive power. You see expressed in academia and stuff like that. But if you ask me for a follow-up, it's outside the Overton window. So
yeah, I sense that. People can Google that at their own discretion. How much more time?
Yeah, just by the way, it's nothing to do with races at all. It actually works within any given ethnic group. So
nice. Oh, good. That's very wholesome.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Five more minutes. Okay. I did want to get into just like coming from the USSR. You're Jewish, which is interesting because it's just a fact that I don't know that many Jewish bodybuilders who are super well known. I'm sure there are more. You know, you joke about being a Jew, and actually I've talked to some Jews who are like, you know, some Jews find that funny. Some Jews are like, oh, I don't like how he jokes about it because it makes us look, you know, it reinforces stereotypes.
What stereotypes? How many Jews look like me? Who the hell are you talking to?
I mean, okay, so for example, I was watching one of your videos, you're very funny, and you made a joke about, because I'm Jewish, money, blah, 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 you know? And which for actually, you know, intelligent, non-racist people, like I feel like, you know, I get that, it's funny, you're playing on a stereotype, but maybe for people who genuinely are dumb enough
or either not intelligent or also racist find that offensive.
No, they wouldn't find that offensive, but they'd be like, yeah, Jews are like greedy or really good with money, you know?
Maybe that's true on the margins. Maybe it's true on average. I mean, like, let's say you were making a joke as a black person about black people being superlative at entertainment. Would anyone find that objectionable? Has there ever been a Caucasian or East Asian entertainer like Michael Jackson? Don't say Michael Jackson. That's funny, but don't say it. No. And so,
and I get it. I make jokes about being a woman.
It's just true. Sure.
You know, I make jokes about being, I'm neurotic today. You know, I am a woman.
Yes.
And, you know, it's funny. Every now and again, I've done it in front of a guy who I believe like genuinely does think that men are better than women. But you know, what can you do? There are people like that. You can't stop joking.
Well, like, I have a real big thing to say about this. Jokes are jokes, and they're supposed to be funny, and they're not supposed to be serious. anyone who doesn't like me joking about Jewish stereotypes can feel free, if they catch me when I'm free, to dive into a discussion of ethnic differences, race realism, statistics. I can swim in deep waters there, no problem. But if self-effacing humor is no longer cool for Jews and we perfected the shit, I have no idea who the fuck's supposed to be joking anymore. I actually use the K word, which I think will get, where is this being posted? Am I allowed to say the K word? Probably shouldn't. Sure. I can say it.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a family function. Everyone's a fucking Jew. And I used the word kike because it's like the N word for Jews. And I used it comedically, obviously. And one of my cousins was like, hey, I don't like you using that word. And in more or less short terms, I was like, I don't give a shit, because you can't possibly be offended by me saying it, because I can't possibly mean it in a derogatory way, first of all. Second of all, it's a word, you fucking asshole. Who gives a shit? There's an idea that we can all joke together about human differences. Like, oh, Jews, they're so ridiculous in so many ways. But also Jews are dope as fuck in so many other ways. You can't have it both ways. Like, hey guys, look at the Nobel Prize laureate list. It's damn near all Jews. We're fucking unbelievable. But like, aren't we also a bit curmudgeon-y on average? Not everyone. Look, if you don't understand statistics and understand that not everyone of an ethnic group is exactly that stereotype, you're just not old enough to understand my humor and just not statistically literate enough. And I'm being a little facetious here. Low-key do mean that a little bit. And so the stereotypes and self-effacing Jewish humor will continue ad infinitum until I'm presented with a compelling case that somehow has a net negative somehow. Like, imagine like, Kevin Hart getting off stage and talking about, oh, black people are so good at sports, white people shouldn't even participate, everyone's fucking dying laughing. And at the bottom, there's like some black civil rights activists, like, you really shouldn't be promoting these stereotypes. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? This is a comedy act. Like, and also I would like to hear like exactly what's bad about promoting them. For example, is the way the next Holocaust happens because someone hears through the grapevine, through comedy, by the way, that Jews are like a little cheap and persnickety at times, depending on which Jews you're talking about. And they're like, oh, what is that? Let's get the dominoes falling. That's it. Fucking kill them all. Bring back Hitler. White power. Is that how it happens? Does anyone really believe that? Like, it's not, the jokes don't lead to the bad things, folks. Deep, unadjusted hatred leads for bad things.
I guess the concern is that it does feel like there's more anti-Semitism now, with the war going on, and objectively that's true when you look at like anti-Semitic incidents being recorded. Firstly, are you concerned about anti-Semitism? Does anti-Semitism affect you? Are you concerned about the future of Jews and their safety?
I have no power over anti-Semitism. I'm not that strong. If people want to come to my house and take it up with me, we have a lot of guns. We know how to shoot them. We'll kill as many people as we can on our way down. So have fun. Mostly this didn't come to that. But I don't enjoy anti-Semitism any more than I enjoy any other kind of anti-anythingism. Anti-black attitudes, anti-Asian, anti-Hispanic, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim. If there's a woman in like somewhere in Montreal who fucking walks by in a burqa and some fucking white dude's like, fucking bitch, go back to your country. I find that exactly as objectionable as someone saying something to a Jewish person. It's fucking vile. Anti-Semitism is something that most people don't understand intuitively and can't connect with. Most people in America don't even know what Jews are. There's others like Seinfeld, funny people, who knows? Most people almost everyone in Asia has just no connection to anti-Semitism whatsoever. Like, it's like, you imagine like two ethnic groups in China pointing the finger at each other, and you're like, I honestly, no offense, can't tell you guys apart. And I literally mean that in political philosophy as well as anything else. So anti-Semitism is like, it has its peaks and valleys. Generally, like Caucasian-driven anti-Semitism's kind of been on the decline since Hitler fucked that all up. Is there a significant amount of anti-Semitism in parts of the Muslim world? It's like Indonesians and Malaysians, give a fuck. They're just trying to live their lives. Kuwaitis, generally speaking, Saudis, Emiratis, they couldn't give a flying fuck. They're just fucking living it up. Like, fucking peace be to Allah. That shit is fucking awesome. But there are some groups of people, especially with an axe to grind, that the Jews are easy to blame. And one of the reasons is like, we look around, they're usually better than you at stuff, and they have more money. And fuck, man, that's super, super tempting to be like, I don't have money because they don't. It's the same seed of jealousy that starts socialist communist revolutions that is undermining anti-Semitism. And I think the way that you solve the problem is two ways. One, rule of law, so that if people come kill other people, you kill them and you tell them you try this shit again, you're fucking dead. Like ISIS used to be a big deal in the Middle East, and then U.S. and allied special forces just killed some tens of thousands of them, and there's just nobody left. Like, that's how you have to deal with folks like that. The good news, that's what they want. So they got their wish. They're all in heaven. And the other way you deal with it is just like honest conversation with people to be like, look, I'm not trying to get you to not be anti-Semitic. You could rationally be anti-Semitic. I'm just trying to show you, like, here's how Jews are. We got some fucking wacky ones over here. We got some dope ones over here. They're kind of like everyone else. They got their ups and downs. And like, maybe if we all unite as a human race and like value each other's ups and help each other up. And when people don't do great things, we're not so quick to say it's because you're that race or because you're that religion. Be like, you can't, don't do that. Don't do that. That's bad. And everyone of their race and religion also goes to them like, yeah, they're right. Don't do that. Like, don't commit crime. Don't fucking rape. Don't do this stupid shit. And then the more we ascend to that mutual agreement that we're all here for all the great things together as peaceful societies. Like, I go to Australia, I go to Sydney, I go to Brisbane. I don't give a fuck who, race, religion, what, anything, people, different colors, religion. Nobody cares. It's peaceful and you're not allowed to attack other people. And then the anti-Semitism is whatever. You're allowed to attack people. It's a fucking problem. You're not allowed to attack people. In general, you know, it's not a good idea. Privately, you can hold any ideas about people that you want in your own head. And if you're statistically literate, you'll allow that to expand to the whole racial group. But if you're statistically literate, you'll understand that like some people on average have behaviors, but there are way more exceptions than anything else. And like generally, you just deal with people as they are.
Beautiful. I think that's
Look,
a nice way to end.
Not hateful at the end.
Yeah, very, very positive. I'm unfortunately feeling a little bit less positive, but that pepped me up.
We'll have to chat about that on another one of these. If I don't cancel this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's a massive. Yeah, it's great to hear that Mike Israetel is a fan of Quillette. And when he started following us, I was like, oh my God, you know, we have like Steven Pinker, Dawkins, you know, presidents, Elon Musk has followed us. But really, who was I most excited about? Mike Israetel.
Your terrible, low standards reflect poorly on you as a young woman.
Okay. Well, yeah, have a great night. Thank you for talking to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.